Welcome back, everybody, to Doc Lil Talks Comics. And it's that time again to talk about my weekly haul. So, what did I get this week? A decent amount of books. And let's start with the pick of the week. Something is Killing the Children, issue number 46 by James Tynion IV, Werther Dell'Edera, and Miquel Muerto. Why is this the pick of the week? Because I kept telling you that if action didn't interject itself, if there was no push, that with issue 50 I was going to drop Something is Killing the Children. It's been one of the greatest books that James Tynion has ever written. And it's been one of the greatest stories and mythologies that's been built up in the world of comics in a very, very, very long time. But the first 15 issues of that series, collected in the Archer's Peak hardcover book, is one solid story, and it is a damn fine story. It's great, and it's got action. You get to see monsters, you get to see Erica Slaughter kill those monsters, you get to see characters develop and then die and then move on to other characters that you fall in love with, and they either survive or they die. It's grand, okay? It's on an epic scale. But then after that, it seemed like he kind of lost his way. From 16 to 20, I think he was telling kind of an origin story, part of the origin story of Eric Slaughter. And the thing about it is, if you learn everything there is about Erica Slaughter, it's kind of like Wolverine. It takes the mystique away. It takes the mystery of who this character is and what her backstory is. But here, you get a small taste towards the end of it, where Erica's familiar is explaining that what she is facing is too big for her, and it's too big for anybody. And she says, the familiar says, "You're not scared enough." She said, "Because I am scared." And she said, "You're not scared enough." But eventually the familiar says, "Okay, I'll scare you enough. I'll tell you what's going to happen. Jessica Slaughter will die and you will not be able to save her." And then he goes on to say, "You won't even know when it happens because the house can't have you distracted. You're such a great hunter that they can't have anything come in between you and the villains that you take out, the monsters that you hunt. Nothing can slow you down. Nothing can distract you. Nothing can take your eye off the prize." And I'm going to read a little bit of this. "You won't be able to say goodbye, and because the house won't want you distracted from the task at hand, you won't know for days or weeks after it happens, not until she's buried in the house plot with the other lost hunters." That is some great character development right there. That is a motivation for her to move forward. And it's a motivation for me to continue to read this book because it is great. When it's on, it's on. But it has not moved the needle, in my opinion, in so long that it's hard to really go out there and say, hey, this is one of the greatest comic books I've ever read. Because once people get to issue 30, it just kind of stops. It moves, but at a snail's pace. So I would be totally okay if we're building up to 47, 48, 49, and then 50, and that's the final issue. Now, I know that's probably not how that's going to happen, but that would be great because you would get to see Jessica and Erica Slaughter kind of go out on a high note. So if you have not read the Archer's Peak books, check that hardcover out. I believe it's in a couple of softcover trades as well, but check those first 15 issues out all at once. And if you like it, then keep reading. But for right now, this book has gone back to the top of the pile. Great job, guys. An excellent, amazing book for this week. Okay, next up, I'm going to talk about this in an upcoming initial assessments video, but we have Web of Venom issue number 1. And this is done by Jordan Morris is the writer, Luke Ross and Ramon Rosanas are the artists, and David Curiel is the colorist. So we have a new Venom who's in the blue and red costume of Spider-Man. It's getting to be a bit much. We've got Mary Jane as Venom, which still makes no sense to me how that works out. None. Apparently there's some sort of biological thing between the two characters where if they get separated, Venom will die and Mary Jane will die. But as far as story plot-wise, that makes no sense. So I'm looking forward to see if this makes any better sense. You have a new symbiote. You have this setup where you don't really know who's behind the mask. And that's really the kick behind this entire first story. So I will talk to you guys about that at greater length in the initial assessment video. Okay, next up we have All Out War between Spawn and Malebolgia. And this is the penultimate issue of the Todd McFarlane written and Brett Booth illustrated run. We get to see Spawn face off against his progeny. And he says, "You're not going anywhere." And there are a lot of words. It's very wordy. You've forgotten, Spawn, that you don't give the orders that I do, though I sense a change since our last encounter. You're different, and I like it. I'm glad you've embraced your destiny. And he rips the symbiote costume off of Al Simmons. And he says, "This was always mine to control. You wear it because I gave it to you." It would be like Odin taking back Thor's hammer and saying, "You know what? I gave you this wonderful weapon to use for the good of humanity, for the good of the gods, and you wasted it." Diana having her lasso of truth taken away by the Amazonians, saying that she had failed her mission of peace in man's world. So he takes the symbiote, and Cagliostro, or Sin, eventually tells Malebolgia, "You know, I made the symbiote. It can't live without a host, so you can't just take it away from Spawn, from Simmons." And in the end, he says, "Where's your cape? I haven't seen your cape." And he's like, "Oh, you want to see my cape? Here's my wings. This is my cape." So you, like I said, you just get all out war with Malebolgia saying, "You know, why do you want me to regain part of Simmons' power so that I can regain mine?" And Sin says, "Because I want you to rule." And he says, "No, I'm not stupid. You don't want me to rule. You want," he says, "so you can thrive once more. No, you don't want me to take energy." And it says, "You want me to take his energy so you can take it from me. And don't say that you wouldn't do that." And in the end, you get to see transformation from Malebolgia, even though he didn't take any of Spawn's power. So next up, Spawn 375. Unless it's absolutely mind-blowing, then I will probably drop this title after 375 as much as I'm loving it. But I just don't know how the next storytellers are going to do. And it's been great to see Todd back on the writing for the last year or so. And Brett Booth, what can I say about Brett Booth that hasn't already been said? Brett is an absolute beast. He has done almost 25 straight issues without missing a beat, and could probably do another 2 years without taking an issue off. But this was a lot of fun. It was not the book of the week. It was not my pick, but it's right up there at the top of the pile. Okay, next up we have Nice House by the Sea, James Tynion IV again, with Alvaro Martinez Bueno and Jordi Belair. You know, we get Courtney Cox here on the cover. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, it is somebody that looks like a businesswoman. Looks like somebody, you know, that Courtney Cox might play in a movie. And you get the continued world-building machinations of Walter. You get to see Reggie try to figure out the computer in the house. He says, the computer's not saying anything. It's waiting on a command. It's waiting on me to tell it what to do. And he says, wait, everybody stand back. Meanwhile, David figures out how to turn his clock back, literally, and makes himself look like he thought he should have back in his 20s. So he shows up like that, and he says, we can all be as hot as we want to be. And somebody said, what the hell, David? And he says, I haven't had a six-pack like this since I was a sophomore in college, so I just rewound the clock. And somebody said, you did not look like this in college. So I made a few tweaks, you know. And the weird thing was that he's figured out how to use the computer inside the house, and so he split all of his arms off so that he can hit all of these different panels at the same time. So this book continues to be weird. It continues to be something that I'm just going to have to sit down and reread all the issues, kind of, 6 at a time, and then the other 6 the next night to get a full understanding of what's going on. But there's multiple houses, multiple people in these houses. Are Walter and his friends going to try to kill the people inside the houses, or were they truly benevolent and they were trying to save people like they said they were? So I'm really hoping this book gets back on track. This is issue number 9 of 12. Please, guys, so that I don't forget what the heck I'm reading, let's just go ahead and get 10, 11, 12 out. There's only 3 issues. So I'm praying that you guys solicited this so that it can come out boom, 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 and be done. But still an amazing book. I'm glad Vertigo has risen so that they can take on something like this. And I can't wait to see what the conclusion is. All right. Next up is Murder Podcast, issue number 6. And this is by Jeremy Hahn with illustrations by Mike Tisserand. And you don't get to see Alan Moore in this title, but that guy kind of looks like Alan Moore, wearing a beanie. That's what I thought the first time that I saw him. But what you do get is you get a yoga class where instead of being breathing and calm, then all of a sudden they hear the Dead Sounds podcast and it just explodes. And then on the other hand, you get the friend group who has captured one of these people in the robes that are creating this podcast and sowing the dissension. And he says, we've been watching, we know that none of this is going to matter soon. So you have this SWAT team that breaks in to try to find the cultists. And in the middle of that, then the Dead Sounds podcast starts popping off. And Nika, one of the characters' wives, says, hey, use your noise canceling, cut it off, kill it at the source. And all of a sudden, it's just a free-for-all with all of the agents and all of the DEA guys and things like that. They just start killing each other and killing everybody in sight. So, unfortunately, Nika takes a bad fall. And we're not sure whether it broke her neck or whether it just left her incapacitated at the moment. But she did manage to escape from the other guys. And let's see. In the end, Nika tells her wife and says, it's going to be okay, but you've got to find these guys. You've got to finish this. And she says, it's going to be okay. The sound is a weapon. Use noise canceling. And she says, I've got to stop this. And she says, no, we're going to stop this. And in the end, one of the friend group says, I think I actually know how to find out where we need to go. So things are building up. This book has been kind of a slow burn the past 5 issues, but with each issue, Jeremy Hahn cranks things up just a little bit. We're not up to 11 yet, either literally or figuratively, but the heat is being turned up on the stove just a little bit with each issue. And I don't know if it's going to be an ongoing, I don't know if it's going to be a 12-issue maxi or a 10-issue maxi series, but I'm in it to win it. This is a lot of fun. Ignition Press has been coming out with some banger comics lately, and I can't wait to see what issue 7 and beyond has in store. Now, they did say Mike Tisserand has illustrated every single issue of this book so far, but it says, coming in May, finally the true story of Gina Kyle and Vivi Sue and how they disappeared recording Dead Sounds. And it's Murder Podcast issue number 7, featuring art by Danny Luckert from Red Mother Jump Scares. So the first, the cover A is by Jeremy Hahn and Nick Filardi. So it's great to see this book get the recognition that it does, because these guys are amazing storytellers. So it's going to be great to see where this book goes. All right. Iron Man issue number 4, continued by Joshua Williamson with art by Carmen Carnero. And you get to see Adam, the would-be Tony Stark, try to come up with a way to get everybody out and save everybody. And later on in the story, you get a heart-to-heart between Tony and Adam. And he says, how are you? How are you holding up? And Adam says, I'm not okay. I'm not like you. I've never been in this kind of situation before. And he says, yeah, but, you took a horrible part of my life. Or no, says, you're more like me than you think. You use your genius to help people. It took a horrible part of my life to get me there, but you were already selfless from day one. And in the end, he says, you've got a bright future ahead of you. And Adam says, well, I'm not smart enough to get us out of here. And Tony Stark says, this is all my fault. I had a worry a long time ago, a selfish worry, and now you're having to pay for it. So in the end, they break loose and they grab everybody else. You've still got this mysterious non-Baron Zemo Citizen V sneaking around, saying that Tony Stark stole something from him and he intends to get it back. And eventually, Tony is able to crack into the helicarrier's information system with Adam's help and talk to Madame Mask directly. You don't get to just kidnap people in the name of science and not deal with your actions. We've had our issues in the past, but I'm disappointed that you took my fear and used it against me like this. And so she says, I'll make you the offer again. Stay here, work with me. You and I can control AIM together and change the world. If you do that, I'll let go of some of the survivors. And she said, when I created the armor, you were pushed to your limit. We had to do the same to some of them. So some of them did not survive. And he says, before I was kind of jokingly angry. Now I'm actually angry. Bye. I'll talk to you later. And out he goes. And so the Fixer is also working with AIM. And Madame Mask thinks that she got Tony because she hits him with this laser that's supposed to kind of plasticize everything. She tells the AIM guys to get him out and let her see what he looks like before he, turns into plastic, and get him out of there. Come to find out, it was a remote unit. So Tony wasn't even in there to begin with. And while Tony is trying to get everybody out, one of the other think tank guys had set off a bomb to blow up the helicarrier that they were using. But something terrible happens to one of the smart guys. And in the end, Tony realizes he's going to have to face something. And it's called the Advanced Iron Man. And who is this? It's the Fixer from the Thunderbolts, who's working with Madame Mask. So he's managed to create what he considers to be a bigger, better, badder Iron Man armor than what Tony has. So Tony, without his armor, is going to have to find a way to defend himself against the Advanced Iron Man. And next to last is we have Dork, issue number 3, where he's getting chased by this dwarf who is, what was his name again? I thought I had it. It's Glowing Spear, Warden of Lightstorm. So here, Glowing Spear is set to take Dork out. And he's got an almighty weapon that's going to erase Dork. Well, in the meantime, there's this white mage that Glowing Sphere comes up against. And he says, you know, hey, I can tell you where to find him. I can tell you where to find Dork. And eventually, he destroys the mage's costume and realizes that is Dork. So now Dork is in for the fight of his life. He's got to find a way to survive. He's got to find a way to defeat this dwarf who's out to get him. And in the end, the shield comes in to save Dork. And Glowing Spear gets so caught up in attacking Dork. The Dork used his brain power, and he got the one thing that Glowing Spear was going to use. It's a potion of life and death. And if you use it, then it deletes a character from the entire mythos of that world. And so Glowing Spear looks for it, and he says, where's the potion? And by the time his eyes get big, and he says, no. And Dork says, I was just going to steal it. Please know that. And damn you for making me do this. And so he throws it at Glowing Spear and makes him disappear. So the book was kind of funny to begin with, but now we're seeing real world consequences, and we're seeing that the world does have life and death in it. It's not just happy-go-lucky fairyland type of thing. So excellent story. I'm digging Dork a lot more than I'm digging White Sky at this point, but I really think that this story at the end of the day will hold up to the test of time. And last but certainly not least, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 26 with writing by Joe Kelly and art by, what is his name? His name is not that. Francesco Manna and Ed McGuinness. And you get part 7 of 9 of Death Spiral, with Spider-Man fighting Carnage, who has now put himself and allied himself with Torment to try to get a higher kill number. Meanwhile, Eddie Brock is in bad shape. Dylan and Venom are trying to find Brock and get him, try to save him, get him to the hospital. Spidey's still trying to fight Torment. And in the end, Carnage is like, kill him, go ahead and get it over with. And Torment says, you must understand the spiral. You must. There's a method here. We can't just go and kill him. Even though you want to kill him right now, we can't do that because it's not time. Well, turns out that he's closing the spirals in, and he's going to go after Aunt Anna and Aunt May. So here's Flash Thompson protecting Aunt Anna. But they're going to end up going to the Feast Family Fun event. And Flash says because it's a family fun night at Feast, which Anna tells me is a huge event that will have a lot of innocent attendees. See you there soon, I hope. And Brock tries to apologize to the symbiote, to Venom, and say, I know that I treated you badly when I was your host. I understand that I didn't treat you with the respect and with the love that you deserved. But me trying to take on Carnage, even though I couldn't keep him contained, that was me trying to keep him from ending up with somebody else that could be worse. So Mary Jane eventually says, I'm sorry, I tried my best, I can be better. My father ran those lines every time he finished tearing into my mother or my sister. Or me. Addicts don't get better by lying to themselves. So, in the end, you get to see Spidey, and he goes to a very dark place. He says, I'm ashamed because for a second I can imagine the sound of his neck snapping. So he's got both of his hands on Carnage Torment's head, and he can just imagine just twisting it and ending everything for both of them. But he who hesitates is lost. And what's funny is, I don't recognize this guy. I don't know if he's somebody that I'm supposed to recognize or not. But he called I call him Pete's first cousin. And so the guy says, did that monster say that we're cousins? He said, yeah, but don't believe everything a psychopath tells you. You're going to be okay, and I'm going to finish this. So we're rolling on towards part 8. I think it'll be next week, perhaps. Maybe with Venom 257. And then we will get the big finale, I believe, in Amazing Spider-Man number 28. Or 27, I mean. Where we get, I believe it's number 27, where we get Spider Carnage. So let's see how that goes from there. But so far, I'm really digging Death Spiral. Anyway, guys, that is the haul for this week. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you taking the time out to do so. If you have not, please like and subscribe to the channel. And I've got a lot more videos coming up, including that video on the initial assessment for the Web of Venom issue number 1. So come back for that, and let's find out together who this new Venom is. All right, guys, Doc out. Take care. Be good to yourself. Be good to your family. Be good to everyone around you. And I'll catch you later.